And here we are. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is the first true 3D entry in the Kirby series, and it's amazing. The level design, the music, the minigames, it's all so dang good, and the bosses are no slouch either. In fact, I would say Forgotten Land has one of the best boss rosters in any video game, even rivaling the likes of Dark Souls 3 and Ys 9. Did I skip a few games and jump straight into this one? Yes, I did. Thank you for asking. Now, you're probably wondering, but Christian, wouldn't it make more sense to do this video after the Enhanced Edition comes out? Probably, but I'm gonna be super busy this summer, so I might not be able to. And hey, I can always just re-rank the bosses in the future if the Enhanced Edition adds new boss fights. For this video, I'll be lumping most of the Phantom bosses in with their regular counterparts. All the bosses here were fought on Wild Mode, the game's hard difficulty, and I don't use the Morphonite Sword for any of the boss fights other than the very last one, since that's the completionist cleanup weapon and it kinda breaks every other boss fight in this game in half. Anyways, with 14 entries to rank, let's get started with the least good boss. And I say least good because it's still fairly fun. Number 14, Silly Dillo. He might be at the very bottom of the list, but honestly, I don't even hate this boss, I just don't think he's as fun as his competition. During the arc where Elflin is kidnapped, we delve into this man's goon cave to find our friend, but unfortunately, there's nothing here other than Chris Chan and his Sonichu figurines, and this boss fight is split into 3 phases. Technically. But all phase 1 does is try to command grab you with his cage. So yeah, his attack is just putting you in the jar. Anyways, when you get to phase 2, he'll start spin dashing around the arena, but mostly the fight is more or less the same as the first phase, just with more room to move around and that new attack to keep in mind. The real shakeup is when he reveals he has a third phase and pulls out his manufactured girlfriend and starts dancing around the arena with her before sending her out as a projectile. It's kinda weird because he doesn't have a lot of attacks despite being fought in the latter half of the game's story. Honestly, his Phantom fight does a little bit better, but only a little bit, as it only adds a single attack where he can now throw out 3 bombs, which will leave a lingering damage area for a little bit. And his final phase brings in a sandstorm with extra fake wives that he'll throw at you. Anyways, jokes and crude humor aside, this boss is far from bad and there's even some enjoyment to be had here, but he's weirdly simple for one of the last members of the Beast Pack you'll fight, and depending on your ability, the cage move can be pretty frustrating to deal with. Number 13, Beast King Leongar. And from one of the last members of the Beast Pack to the leader of the Beast Pack. Okay, so I do like this boss, but there's just an objectively better version of this fight that makes this original one a bit hard to go back to because it feels so simple in comparison. Like Silly Dillo, he has 3 phases to his name, but they're kinda mixed. With phase 1 just being fighting off regular enemies and nothing really exciting happening at all. Once you get to phase 2, Alex the Lion decides he's going to come down and fight you himself, and he's okay. He swipes at you, he goes for some thrust attacks, and he has his shockwave and leap attacks as well, making him feel like a bit of a fusion between Goromando and clawroline, though he's oddly passive in this phase. Of course, maybe I should learn to shut up because phase 3 is where he stops being passive and he now goes feral with how aggressive he is, as he's going to start doing claw swipes and beams of cosmic energy that I don't think lions can do, and he'll charge around the arena and bite you, effectively turning his body into a hitbox. It thankfully isn't too hard to dodge, but it just goes on for too long, and here he can actually turn on a dime, so the only option is to run away or perfect dodge and hope you have a decent ranged attack option. Not a bad boss, he's a cool villain, but there's just an objectively far superior version of this fight that makes the original battle look pretty lacking in comparison, even though I'd still say it's a good fight. Number 12, Tropical Woods. The weird tree attacked and grew a beard. This incarnation of Wispy bucks the trend of being the first boss by instead being the second boss of the game. A funny little bait and switch that I think is ultimately to this game's benefit, but we'll talk about that when we get to the actual first boss. Now, being a giant tree, our foe is immobile, instead rotating in place to face the puffball, but he can shoot out air bullets and drop giant coconuts on your head. Now, coconuts may sound goofy, but remember, they kill more people every year than sharks do. In phase 2, he'll start doing giant gusts to force Kirby back like he's Divine Dragon or something, and he becomes more aggressive with his air bullets, boxing you in with his roots, and putting up a barrier to stop your offense against a part of his body. It's a neat little escalation challenge that's something you're going to see in this game a lot, actually, and I kind of like that when bosses do it, where they just build off stacking mechanics that you've learned throughout the fight. The Phantom battle amps things up a bit by throwing Gordos into the mix and giving his air bullets a spread explosion on top of just being bigger in general. On top of that, he now is far more aggressive with his root spikes, and instead of just a barrier to stop some damage, he creates a maze with Gordos bouncing around for the player to navigate. Overall, I actually think it's a very neat evolution over the original fight that makes it stand out more. There's not really any major caveats or buts for this placement. Going forward, I like all the remaining bosses, no strings attached, I just prefer some of them over others. Number 11, Fecto Forgo. You get to the end of Lab Discovera, you defeat the main antagonist, Beast King Leongar, but then the old one wakes up and starts talking about some all shall be consumed thing before devouring Leongar's body and the other members of the Beast Pack that were present, as the boss turns into that thing from the ending of Akira, and now you're being chased down by this terrifying flesh monster that was a dude you were talking with just a few minutes ago. The fight is super easy, only having one real phase, but he does become more aggressive as his HP drops, as he'll start charging the screen more often, throwing out blobs to act as hazards, and throwing out more blobs whenever his health gets lower. And yeah, you kind of get to see the laboratory collapse around you as well. The fight is purely here to fill the role of Kirby boss that will give you night terrors, but I think it works well as a story beat to show how deadly this great one truly is. If this is some incomplete form that just devoured whatever was nearby instead of fusing together with its missing half. So you get this terrifying but ultimately much weaker monster in the process. But I wonder what a fight against its true form, or even the Great One itself, would be like. Number 10, Goramondo. From the end of the journey to the start of the journey, Goramondo does a great job as the game's tutorial boss and showing off what Forgotten Land truly has up its sleeve, as you see the gorilla waste no time grabbing you and pulling you outside to battle in this old courtyard. You get to see more of this land. Goramondo as well has a decent array of attacks ranging from stomps, swipes, grabbing you, throwing large rocks in his first phase, and he also keeps amping things up when you get to the second phase as well, where he'll add in new attacks like a cyclone spin, and also just more deadly attacks in general. It kind of hammers home the whole idea of, okay, yeah, we're really doing this with a 3D Kirby game. His Phantom battle changes things up, not only attacking much faster, but actively leaping at you to attack instead of just having it as a getaway option, and having new Stomp Shockwave combos in his second phase, as well as his tornado attack gaining 4 mini tornadoes that pick up wreckage and fling them around just to keep you on your toes. It's a good escalation, but he's still not that hard, which is probably a good thing since he's your introduction to the Forgo Dreams arc of the game, which is hard mode, so it's going to show that things are getting more challenging without getting too crazy just yet. Number 9, King DDD. At the end of the game's first major arc, we face off with the presumed ruler of the Beast Pack, King DDD himself. But he seems far crueler than his usual self and has no recognition of the Waddle Dees, so something's probably off here. Phase 1 of the fight is more or less what you'd expect from DDD, with his hammer swings, charges, and belly flops. He also has a jumping attack now with some shockwaves thrown in. It's a good adaptation of his classic Kirby's Dream Land 1 fight. But the real treat is when you get to phase 2, where he dumps his hammer, and you can actually use that hammer for yourself, and he picks up a giant stone column to beat you with, requiring quick vertical and horizontal dodges to not get clipped by his attacks, and he has a slam attack with a delayed AoE explosion. Funny thing is, this was the game I played right after beating Elden Ring, so I remember his attacks reminding me a lot of the Radagon fight. Anyways, he's a lot tougher than the other early game bosses, and he's a good deal of fun with his awesome rendition of his boss theme. Overall, I like this battle quite a bit. Though he gets knocked down a few spots because of his Phantom variant, which I have less fondness for because his attack speed was just cranked up to shit 100 and fuck, and while his Gordo attack and pillar combos are okay, this fight is so far into the game that you're not only going to have your master abilities, but they'll be upgraded as well, so it kind of just ends up being a feast or famine sort of battle, because he does not have the HP to keep up with the Dragon Fire, but if you choose to fight him fairly, you just deal with a kind of frustrating battle against a spammy boss. Number 8, Morpho Knight. And to cap off the Forgo Dreams arc of the game, we have the final boss of the second major campaign. What's Morpho Knight doing here? Well, he came to the same portal as you did, and you actually see him get sucked in at the beginning of the game's opening. And he's looking for some new food to devour. Leon doesn't suit his taste, so instead he chooses to disintegrate the Great One and comes out to face you in a sword duel because, honestly, I have no idea why this monster butterfly is here. He just likes to test Kirby, I guess. Anyways, his boss fight itself is pretty damn good, as a tough challenge with Morpho Knight using some similar attacks to Meta Knight with his combos, sword beams, and all the likes, but instead of high speed and aerial maneuverability, he prefers overwhelming power and striking fear into your heart, as he'll use the soul of the Great One as an attack, create multiple fire tornadoes, create a loud noise that screws with your perception, causing the arena to get twisted in different ways, and create walls of fire that you need to jump because they don't give a rat's ass about your iframe dodges, and that's all just in the first phase. Phase 2 keeps all the same attacks, just kicking the aggression up a notch or 17, and he also gains new patterns with his fire tornadoes like spreading out around his body, filling the entire arena, and also the ability to create 2 giant greatswords that end with a flaming wall that closes in on both sides and erupts. It's a tough fight, perhaps even the hardest battle in the entire game, but you should be prepared for it by this point because it's the last fight of the story. And his music is really cool as well. Granted, his boss theme isn't my favorite, but Morpho Knight doesn't really have a set boss theme like other antagonists in the series do, instead having a modified version of other songs. And in this case, we get a dramatic sounding remix of the main theme with a lot of electric guitar and some muted trumpets thrown in for good measure. Overall, a fantastic showing. It's just that Forgotten Land has such a stacked boss roster that even a fight this fun still ends up in the bottom half of the list. The ending is actually pretty nice, as Carol rallied the surviving Beast Pack members to help restore Leon's soul, and I'm glad that they made the extra mode still part of the story so players are more inclined to see it through to the end. Meta Knight is just freaking awesome in this game. I always fight him with the regular sword when I'm playing for fun to give him the awesome duel he deserves. Meta Knight is an aggressive foe with sword slashes, beams, a charge attack that if wielding a sword you can actually clash against him, and more. Then in phase 2 he will take to the sky, drop down rocks on you before becoming more aggressive in general, and this is where I honestly knew this game was going to have some great bosses because the first 3 fights are fun but still fairly easy as we're in the early game, but this man takes to the sky to charge up his multiple sword beam attack, and I remember thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna get him trapped in a corner, rendering this attack useless, only for him to zoom out of the way and get me with the counter hit because he's not an idiot. And that's kind of where I realized, oh, they know what they're doing. And we can't forget that if you beat him in a clash, you can steal the Galaxia from him, so what does he do? He'll pull out his old chipped bronze sword that he used in Kirby's Adventure because he's cool. I also love how he gets to be an optional boss fight. It allows him to remain a challenge but not have him waste a late game world boss slot, and the entire reason is because he's not a jobber and actually fought off the Great One and the Beast Pack, keeping Waddle Dee Town safe while Kirby went out to explore and find more survivors. Hell, his Phantom fight is so damn good I'm giving it a separate spot on the list. Spoilers, I guess. Number 6, Clawroline. Also known as the second in command of the Beast Pack and the Circus Master herself, Clawroline is the first boss closer to your weight class, meaning she can be a faster opponent than some foes that you face. Granted, her first phase is basically nothing at all, as all she's really going to do is swipe at you, and occasionally, and I mean very occasionally, leap into the air to slam, but when her health starts to drop, she can do a spot-like dash attack, which is kind of cool. The real shakeup is in phase 2, where she's able to start clinging to the different parts of the stage, hop around like an acrobat, chain her moves together, throw knives at you, lunge towards you, and even go invisible, coming in for a dash attack after all the spotlights gather on you. What's interesting is she's not under the Great One's influence like the other members of the Beast Pack, and instead follows them out of her loyalty to Leon. Which, thankfully, she draws the line in all the Akira shit, as she's the one to save Elflin after the worlds nearly collide, and he fully intended to sacrifice himself, but that's spoilers for the ending. Her not being under the Great One's influence is also the reason why she can't directly speak to Kirby and has to talk through Elflin in order to communicate with you, which is kind of a neat little piece of story detail. Her Phantom fight not only takes the training wheels off, but throws him off a cliff as she can now chain her attacks together, moves a good deal faster, and in Phase 2, she'll make clones of herself which can vastly extend her attack combos on top of her having the Claw Beam attack that Leongard used. Overall, she's a good boss that prepares you for the increase in speed and challenge of the later bosses, while not going quite as hard as the likes of Meta Knight, though it is weird how she's the second in command in the Beast Pack, but she's also the second one you fight and defeat. Though I guess it also should be mentioned how she still continues to prepare you in the Phantom battle, where she's going to be the real escalation in difficulty that these later fights will bring. Number 5, Soul Forgo. Well, that was easy. Okay, not quite. After going all the way to the end of the true arena and beating Chaos, the game says, and here we are, as we get to throw hands with the Old One in his incomprehensible spherical form. This boss is tough, coming immediately after another boss, and he loves his laser attacks, as well as the black hole attack. The creepiest part, though, at least in the first phase, is the lack of music, as Phase 1 is just playing the distorted voice clips from Lab Discovera on loop. But of course, this fight is more than just ominous, as it's your final challenge and the guitars kick in at around 60% HP, where the man becomes a meteor, and you have to platform on the wreckage to get high enough to dodge, since Kirby can't infinite flutter in this game. After that, the fight has him splitting himself into pieces to rain down fire, become a black hole, smash the ground. It's honestly kind of like fighting Drasha's soul in 3D, and the laser attacks can also be cool. As the game's super boss, it provides a fun challenge for those looking to achieve 100%, and I respect how tough the in-game bosses are willing to get, but the Morphonite Blade is busted, so I opted not to use it for any boss fights other than this one, since you can't get it until you've obtained the true ending, and it kills almost every other boss in seconds. However, this guy is more than able to stand up to it for a good while. A fun final challenge, but it's got nothing on the battle that comes before it. Number 4, Forgo Dedede. Surprisingly, Dedede actually has 2 different boss fights in this game, and they're both pretty darn fun, but the second fight is better by a lot. By this point, Dedede dons a boar mask and clearly ain't quite right, but we got an angry king dual-wielding hammers and creating fire tornadoes, as well as tornadoes coming our way, so we need to get to work. Overall, Dedede is the last boss of the final proper world of the game, and your gatekeeper to the end game, and Forgo Dreams as well. He's kind of the test to see if you're ready for a lot of what the in-game and its challenges are going to throw your way, and you need to beat him if you want to see the credits, which is a bit easier said than done, because he's the only boss in the main story with 2 health bars, where Phase 1 has him fight like an enhanced version of the classic Dedede battle. And Phase 2 has him turn into Dark Beast Ganon from Twilight Princess. Anyways, he's going to be charging around like a mad boar, can spawn in ads with a roar attack, flops creating shockwaves and area of denial, can pound the ground to unleash flame tornadoes, and has the mass Dedede theme play on top of a suction attack that looks like he gained the hypernova powers in between games. His Phantom fight is another 2 health bar ordeal, with him being able to tilt the arena in Phase 1, have fire tornadoes, throw his hammer to create pillars, once again reminding me of Radagon, throw his hammers like boomerangs while he leaps into the air and around the arena to pancake you, and that's to say nothing about his second health bar, where he begins to call down meteors that will tilt the arena in all different directions as he runs around and the place you're fighting on begins to become unstable. And also, those mini fire tornadoes he does will remain constant throughout the fight. The only downside, I guess, if you could call it a downside, is that you can get Wild Hammer from him, and it can kind of 2-shot the second phase, making it a lot easier. But it's still an amazing battle with the mighty King of Dreamland, because at the end of the day, it's D, and he's doing a great job here. But I guess since it's a day that ends in Y, D was brainwashed by the Great One, becoming another member of the Beast Pack, but after beating him for the second time, he regained his memories and he's happy to see his Waddle Dee safe. But as we progress into Lab Discovera, a horde of the Beast Pack come down to attack, and in order to save a Waddle Dee, he grips him and decides to throw him to safety before doing his valiant final stand against overwhelming odds. Okay, well, not exactly. It's like 8 dudes, and with Hammer, you should be able to take him out without issue, but hey, I guess you want to keep your little buddies safe. Whatever, it's D, let him do his thing.
Welcome, visitors, to...
Ah! White woman jump scare. Okay, sorry about that. This point is where you reach Lab Discovera and the game drops the biggest lore bombs and plot revelations in the series. Okay, well, maybe not the whole series, but definitely in this game, but I'll save a lot of that discussion for number 1 and 2 on the list.
And here we are.
Number 3, Phantom Meta Knight. While the other bosses have major or minor story significance, this boss has none and gets here on fun alone. See, all the other Phantoms are part of the Forgo Dream story arc, so you have to beat them for the game's true ending, but not this guy. He's exclusive to the Ultimate Cup Z, along with the other super boss, and is here solely as an extra challenge for completionists, and you know what? I frickin' love this fight. This took the already fun boss fight against Meta Knight and kicked it up to 11, giving him the aggression and power, but the Phantom form doesn't show the friendly restraint that he usually gives Kirby. This boss is faster and stronger than Morpho Knight, and you have to beat Morpho Knight in order to get to this fight in the first place. I actually beat Sekiro recently and got the true ending, and Inner Genichiro was a ton of fun. So, to make a weird comparison, this is Meta Knight's inner variant, taking what worked and cranking it up to 11 for a serious challenge, and I've tiptoed around it long enough. The boss theme here, Sword of the Surviving Guardian, is not only one of the best boss themes in the game, but also Meta Knight's best boss theme to date, and I will die on this hill. Number 2, Forgo Leon. Morpho Knight isn't the only original boss at the end of Forgo Dreams. Instead, you'll reach a chaotic version of the destroyed Lab Discovera, possibly displaced after the whole planetary incident during the final battle, and more importantly, you'll find Leon, who is seemingly alive and even goes on with Kirby and Elflin's little victory dance at first, which I love, but sadly he's only being kept alive because of the Great One, and the creature's soul has a deep-seated hatred for Kirby. So we've got a boss fight on our hands here, and a 3-phaser no less. Interestingly, Forgo Leon is a bit of an inverse over the first fight, where his first phase is similar to the last phase of the Beast King fight. And another improvement is that his charge attack is actually faster here, which means it doesn't go on forever. So I call that a win. So while we fight this boss, let's talk about the story for a bit. Years ago, humanity came into contact with this astral being known as a Great One that years ago caused massive damage to the planet, but ultimately it was subdued and provided them advancements never seen before, and the people became enamored by its power before ultimately seemingly ascending to a higher plane, leaving behind the animals in this forgotten land. However, the Great One was left incomplete, now granting heightened intelligence to the animals, such as Leon, to form the Beast Pack in order to serve its wishes to gather living beings to further its lust for power, as well as expand its search for its missing counterpart, in exchange providing them with food, supplies, increased power, and the allure of ascending themselves once reaching their full potential. Leon was granted his wish of providing for his kingdom, and given far greater insight than any other, but he ultimately became a puppet of the Great One with no true freedom of his own, having his own body utilized by the Great One before being discarded at the end. Yes, we are in fact still playing Kirby in the Forgotten Land. Anyways, the second phase of the fight has Forgo the Great One briefly manifest before taking over Leon completely, and now the battle is much closer to his first phase, albeit on crack, as the Beast King now has his fire effects thrown into his attacks, as well as some cosmic aura attacks thrown in that have grown so powerful they start to destroy the arena around you and collapse the ceiling. This battle is genuinely one of the hardest fights in the series. There's no cheesing it out with an overpowered weapon because he has enough HP to not crumble to your attacks, and 3 phases means he's guaranteed to at least show off some of his might no matter how strong you are, because you can't get the Morpho Nightblade until you beat this guy. Then we get to phase 3, which builds off his phase 2 moveset, but now Forgo has grown tired of this imperfect vessel, so he's using him as a mindless weapon with no concern for Leon's health, as he'll force him to use his own life force to attack you. And he's got some pretty strong combo attacks here, as the spirit of the Great One itself is now going to be joining in the battle to shoot out projectiles with shockwaves, on top of exploding to cover over half the arena. This fight is an absolute beast with very little downtime, and will make you work for that true ending, even more than Morpho Knight in my opinion. Overall though, it's a phenomenal battle with an amazing orchestral boss theme, a cool design, a good story, and even the signature Kirby Eldritch Nightmare. But if you've played this game, then number 1 should come as no surprise to anyone. The final battle of Kirby in the Forgotten Land, taking place at the top of Lab Discovera at one of the highest points in the Forgotten Land. This is a battle where you'll be put to the test, as Elphalus is the complete form of the Great One, using its overwhelming power but having its missing half Elphalin to stabilize the body. This boss loves his melee combos, portals, lasers that can also destroy parts of the arena, and spears of light that can be used at range or up close, and initially he'll stay still when casting them, but on the third cast of his Spears of Light, he'll actually start throwing them together with his melee attacks, so you kind of need to focus on dodging both at the same time, as it's stacking mechanics. I like stacking mechanics. And I also have to mention the music in this boss fight, having over a dozen different possible phase transitions to enter phase 2. And while phase 1 is really cool, I think the transition to phase 2 is one of the greatest points in any video game ever. Just watch. The way the guitar kicks in as the giant meteor starts to fall, the melody picking up as he starts scraping along the ground. Ah, man, I just love it so much! It's a tough fight. Elphalus doesn't screw around, and his second phase just adds to the trippy nature of everything while increasing his aggression. But you're also being backed up by one of the best final boss themes in a video game, which keeps you encouraged. He keeps all his same moves from phase 1 but builds off it in a way that's just fun, as now his combos have a couple little mix-ups thrown in, and he can also do things like chain portals to his lasers, or he can even potentially chain his spear attack to his portals, which will allow him to create more shockwaves. And he also has a healing move that gives you a good chance to capitalize and do a lot of damage to him if you can stop it. But before we get to talking about his third and final phase, let's talk about his inner variant, so to speak. Chaos Elfless takes a fun fight and ups the challenge with a lot of faster attacks, more light spears, and teleporting thrown into his combos just to try and trip you up. Though ultimately, while it is harder, Phase 1 is pretty much more of the same in the Chaos form as it was with his original battle, just amped up to 11. The big shakeup is in Phase 2, where he summons an Avatar of Destruction, and after you dodge his first attack, you'll now have to deal with both it and whatever attack Chaos Elfless may throw out, such as his spears or his trying to attack you with melee. Once again, stacking mechanics are back. Now, he can combo you like before, but he can also delay his attacks with a teleport before letting loose, and his laser beam no longer chases you, but instead fires through portals like Magalore did in Return to Dreamland, and he even has the meteor attack from before, along with the spears, but he no longer uses the giant meteor, strangely. But that's enough about Chaos. Let's get back to Fecto Elfless, as the final phase isn't really a challenge, it's a pure spectacle. With Elfalin freed, Forgo's body is beginning to melt, possibly on the verge of turning back into the Akira monster, so he says to hell with all of this and reveals he's going to crash Popstar into Earth, taking you both out, and now you know why the final boss theme is called Two Planets Approach the Roche Limit. So, how do you beat him? With the game gimmick, of course, this time using the power of big motherfucking rigs to drive along the collapsing buildings through warped gravity to deliver the final blow. Yes, this phase is easy and goofy as hell, but who cares? It's fun, and that just perfectly sums up Kirby. The music is encouraging, and it's got the spectacle to wrap things up after a fairly difficult two-phase battle. And the fight ends with the obligatory beam struggle, but instead of getting overwhelmed and stomped, he keeps fighting you, even as his body breaks apart and you isekai his ass with the truck. Fecto Elfless isn't just the best boss in this game, he's one of the greatest video game bosses and final bosses of all time, pretty comfortably in my top 10, chilling out up there with the likes of Soul of Cinder. And that's all for this boss ranking. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is a masterpiece of a game with one of the best boss rosters I've ever seen. If you haven't played this game, I really think you should. I can't recommend it enough. I 100%ed it and enjoyed every second of my time playing it from start to finish. I personally recommend playing the game on Wild Mode if you're more experienced with action games, but if you're a casual gamer, Breeze Mode is perfectly fine, and the entire game can be played co-op with a friend. Absolute masterclass of a game, and if the Enhanced Edition gives me an excuse to replay this game and make another boss ranking for it in the future, I certainly will without hesitation. That's all I've got for now. If you'd like to see more videos of varying quality, like other Kirby boss rankings in fact, consider liking and subscribing. Leave a comment to tell me if I'm an idiot for missing a boss, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, everyone.